The fight for Anbar province, Shiite militias in Iraq announced an operation northeast of Ramadi, laying the groundwork to try and recapture the city from IS. Under European pressure, the Israeli Prime Minister makes a reported proposal to discuss borders on settlements blocks. The Palestinian leadership responds, calling it unacceptable. And hundreds dead in a heat wave across parts of India, with warnings the conditions will continue for days longer.
The News Today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening and welcome to the news today. We begin tonight in Anbar province in Iraq, where Shiite militias seem to have taken the lead in a planned campaign to push out the Islamic State. The government, with the help of those militias, is scrambling to recapture Ramadi, its biggest military setback in nearly a year. But amid those fightings, the Islamic State, who's taking the lead, and has the situation take a new sectarian tone? Correspondent Ben-Ari has the story.
An operation to drive the militants of the Islamic State terrorist group out of the western Iraqi province of Anbar and other areas is now underway. Not surprisingly, the effort is being spearheaded by Iran-backed Shiite militias, currently the most powerful military force at the disposal of the Iraqi government. The Shiites themselves announced the operation with a dramatic flair.
At 5 a.m. this morning, a convoy of heroes departed while singing the poems of heroes and victories to announce the start of the Labbaik Ya Hussein operation through the barrels of their rifles.
The militias, as well as standard Iraqi forces, are expected to move southwards from Salahuddin province into the areas northeast of Ramadi before encircling the city ahead of an effort to retake it. Ramadi was captured by IS jihadists earlier this month.
The area for which the Labbaik Ya Hussein operation will operate will cover the northern areas of the Salahuddin province and southwest Tikrit, all the way to northeast Ramadi. This is a vast area which is thousands of square kilometers wide and an area where IS is present.
The Shiites have promised the new operation will be completed quickly, involving new weaponry that would, quote, surprise the enemy. The name given to this operation, Labbaik Ya Hussein, roughly translated as "We are at your service, O Hussein," is significant and will have done little to calm the anxieties of those who warned against using these Shiite militias in Sunni-dominated areas for fear of sectarian backlash. Hussein was the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, killed in the 7th century battle leading to the split between Shia and Sunni. The Baghdad government has managed to persuade some Sunni tribal leaders to accept cooperation with the Shiites in the effort against IS. But even if this operation is successful, sectarian strife is likely to remain a reality in this war-torn country.
And with me right now in the studio here is a senior Middle East analyst, Ali Waqid. Good evening.
Good evening.
So let's try to understand, is there a shift in the balance of power with what we're seeing right now?
No, I don't think that it is a shift. The Iraqi government is still on the lead if we compare it to the Shiite militias. But yes, if you are asking about what will happen in the coming days in Anbar province and specifically on the city of Ramadi, the combination between the boots on the ground led by the Shiite militias and the airstrikes of both the Iraqi Air Force and the American Air Force will bring the city to be cleaned from the presence of the Islamic State. Now the question, Lucy, it is the tactical level. On the strategic level, whether the Sunni tribes will join this effort, this campaign, and will accept the place and the power of the state, or they will retry to reinfiltrate the Islamic State or another jihadist group in the Al-Anbar province. If we take into consideration that the Anbar province is so crucial for the Islamic State in its road both to Baghdad and to Syria.
I'm trying to understand right now, who's fighting who? The Sunni fighting against Sunni, Shiite is fighting against Sunni, Shiite is fighting against Shiite. Who is fighting who right now?
Let's say there is two fights. The fight between the regime, the Iraqi government, and the Islamic State. But in the background of both sides, there are the Shiite militias participating at the side of the government and the Sunni tribes that most of them are supportive to the Islamic State. In between, there are some Sunni tribes that want to be a part of the governmental campaign if the the government will be ready to take their needs and the political will into consideration.
So can we say that maybe the Shiite militias that we're talking about are stronger than the Iraqi army?
The Shiite militias, I don't know if they are stronger than the Iraqi army, but they were trained by Iran, and they were trained by Iran to exactly this scenario, to exactly this kind of fights, while the American, for 10 years, they trained the Iraqi army to be a conventional army, not capable to fight a couple of thousands of fighters of the Islamic State.
So again, we fight the United States and Iraq basically fighting themselves in one battleground.
If you want, Lucy, and if we look at the big picture, the United States is backing the Iraqi government. On the other hand, they are backing the Saudis, that they are the enemies of Iran, that is the ally of the Iraqi government.
So where are we heading right now from this point in Ramadi?
From this point, I think that in the coming days we'll see very tough fights, and I assume that they will end by cleaning the city from the Islamic State. The question is whether the Islamic State will try to regain Ramadi or will go to the next station, because the road and the strategy of the Islamic State is so clear, to guarantee the roads to Syria and to try to advance, to progress towards Baghdad. And we see that, and we saw it in Kobani last year. It was a kind of euphoria by the end of last year when we saw the Islamic State defeated in Kobani. We thought that this might be the beginning of the end of the Islamic State, and we were far from being at that point.
And now it's even more far than we thought. Thank you very much for this. And we're staying basically in the same area, like we're saying, in the fight in Syria. In the ancient city of Palmyra, the Syrian regime is carrying out strikes against IS after the terror group captured the city on May 22nd. I'm concerned that the city's antiquities would be lost. The government antiquities chief claimed today that the ruins are unharmed at this point. And the Iranian government has announced that the delivery of the Russian S-300 air defense system will happen in the near future, a development that could have major consequences on the balance of power and deterrence in the Middle East. Shai Ben-Ari explains.
It's one of the critical pieces in a high-stakes game of international diplomacy played out across the globe. Many see the Russian S-300 air defense system as having the potential to change the balance of deterrence in the Middle East. For this reason, the missile system is coveted by the Iranian regime, which, despite the prospect of a likely deal with world powers on its nuclear program, would like the extra protection the S-300 can provide against attacking aircraft, as well as against cruise and ballistic missiles. Talks between Russia and Iran on the delivery of the S-300 systems to the Islamic Republic are ongoing. On Monday, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian described them as, quote, successful during a press conference in Moscow, adding the delivery itself will happen at the soonest opportunity possible. On April 13th, Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a decree allowing the sale, which he had previously blocked.
I would like to emphasize that the S-300 missile is an exclusively defensive weapon. It is not designed to attack, and it will not threaten the security of any country in the region, including, of course, Israel.
This sentiment was reiterated by Lavrov in a radio interview Monday, but the Russian foreign minister also added that, quote, those who want to deliver a strike at Iran will have to think at least twice before doing it. The presence of the S-300 system in Iran will mean a military strike against the Islamic Republic's nuclear installations will become all the more difficult. Referencing Tehran's role in the deteriorating situation in Yemen, Lavrov said Russia doesn't want Iran to become another target for the illegitimate use of force. Some see the timing of the Russian decision as part of nuclear negotiations themselves, a way to apply pressure on Western diplomats. But until the delivery itself happens, some cards will remain unplayed.
Whew, surprise, surprise, look who we didn't speak about a lot. It's Russia, and with me to explain this mess, Iranian politics analyst, Mayor Javed Alfar. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
We didn't speak about Russia for a long, long time now. Let's put them into this big mess.
Yes. Well, what's happening right now is that the Russians have said they're going to deliver the S-300 missile, but again, they haven't given a date. This is a date that Iran's been waiting for the last 8 years now. I don't know many other countries that will wait to receive such a system after 8 years of delays, but the Iranians
because when you're saying in the near future, it's like you're saying in the Arabic culture, inshallah, it will happen.
Well, actually, one of the senior Russian foreign minister officials says he cannot give a date at the moment. So that means that they're, on the one hand, they're trying to keep the Iranians happy by saying, yes, we'll deliver the system to you, but we can't say when. But at the same time, they're right now, and you know, John Kerry was in Moscow recently. Yes. There's some talks going on between the Americans and the Russians on Ukraine. The Russians don't want to burn their bridges too fast when it comes to Ukraine. And there's also, I don't know if this has got any connection or not. Maybe the Russians are worried that if they give the S-300 missiles to Iran, Israel might start selling weapons to the Ukrainians. I mean, I don't know. It's a possibility. But there's something there that it's amazing that the Russians are still not saying even when they're going to deliver it.
Because for me, it seems that somebody like, let's say, gave a small threat to Russia, saying, okay, you know what, you want to play this game? No problem. You were in a mess with Ukraine. You were in a mess in the Middle East. You want to take the sides of Iran. This can work out in a really bad way for you.
Well, it's true, but you know, in terms of Israel, how we should look at it. If Iran, let's just say tomorrow, receives this S-300 missiles, first of all, it will be bad news on the one hand because it will be the most advanced anti-aircraft system that Iran has. But on the other hand, let's look at it for what it is. S-300 missile is the old missile system. The Russians don't even produce it anymore. So it's even more ridiculous.
So what, these are leftovers?
No, exactly. They are right now. When Russia says it can't say when it will deliver, those missiles that Russia is going to deliver are right now made and are sitting in a Russian warehouse. Number one, they're old. Number two, the export version. Export versions are usually the least sophisticated versions of any system that the Russians sell because they're worried if they sell a sophisticated one day if it falls in the hands of the Americans, they're going to have all their technology. This is a lesson they learned after they left a lot of their sophisticated weapons in the hands of Eastern European powers, and then they left the communism and they joined the West. So, you know, it is something to be worried about, but it's not a very sophisticated system, and it's going to be one of the most basic versions of this system.
So let's ask right now with us on the phone. You stay with me, Meir. With us on the phone is Uzi Rubin, former director, Israel Missile Defense Organization. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
Good evening to you and to all the watchers and listeners.
So, Mr. Rubin, let's try to understand what is exactly this S-300. Maybe this missile, these missiles that we're talking about, like Meir said, are the, let's say, version that is less progressed than we think and less sophisticated than we think.
The S-300 is the older version of the Russian standard anti-aircraft missile system. They have a newer version which is now being deployed, which is called S-400. So they are currently selling the Iranian the slightly older system, still a very capable system. It's not that primitive, quite sophisticated. It was considered in its time the best air defense system in the world, with some limited missile defense capability too. But you know, whatever is designed by humans can be defended against and overrun by humans. So eventually, I'd say air forces will learn how to cope with S-300 if they didn't already, because one system like that exists in the West.
Try to explain to me, Mr.
the island of Crete.
Try to explain to me, Mr. Rubin, how do you cope with it? How do you protect? Because you know, well, the main concern of Israel.
Even if I knew, I wouldn't share it with.
the main concern of Israel basically is that these missiles will reach Iran and eventually will reach Hezbollah, that is sitting right now on the border with Israel. So Israel is really worried about that. But if Israel is really worried about that, I believe that it has some kind of, like you said, a way to defend itself against these missiles if they are so not sophisticated like we think.
It makes the situation more complicated, but not unviable. Anything that is designed can be broken into, like anti-burglar systems. Everything can be overrun. So eventually, in time, you know, in the past there were very sophisticated air defense systems for the time, like SA-6, which caused a lot of harm to the Israeli force in the Yom Kippur War, and then Western armies, Air Force learn how to cope with it. So it's a matter of time. I think the most important message here is not military, it's political. This is a slap in the face of the Obama administration, since it was the Obama administration that requested the Russians to refrain from selling it. Remember, they have quite large air forces in the Middle East facing Iran.
Yes.
So the first threat is to the American U.S. capability in the Gulf region.
Yes, Mr. Uzi Rubin, thank you for this phone call, and thank you for not sharing the secrets how to defend from these missiles. Thank you very much.
You are most welcome.
Well, I think
Mr. Rubin said that it is more of a political message than
the S-300, if I'm not mistaken, the Greek Cypriots have it, and Cyprus and Greece is a member of NATO. So, you can connect the dots there that perhaps somebody has done, maybe they know what's going on. We don't know. Maybe not. But already the Greek Cypriots have such a system. And this is something that's... so it is a system that already exists in the West, the Russians. And they're going to sell it to the Egyptians as well, and the Egyptians... But we also have to remember the Russians, I don't think they will want the S-300 to go from Iran to Hezbollah. Because it could end up that Israel could destroy them, and that's going to put a lot of strain on Israel-Russia relations. And you can say whatever you want about Putin, but on the one hand, of course, he works with our enemies, but he does try to respect us also. I mean, he has tried to make sure that some of the weapons that go to the Syrians are not sophisticated. They don't go to the hands of Hezbollah. Before they did, but now apparently he's being more careful. Russia, on the one hand, suspects Israel, but they also respect Israel because we have a working relationship with them. They buy UAV systems from us, which is very important to the Russians. And they found out in the war against Georgia that the Georgians were operating Israeli UAVs, and that was really helping them. And after that, Russia became a customer of Israeli UAVs. So, I think the Russians, as much as they want to maintain their relationship with Iran, they also want to maintain their relationship with the state of Israel. We are a very important country to them as well.
Which means that for now, again, Iran finds itself in a lose-lose situation.
When it comes to Russia, almost always.
Mayor Jaffa Port, thank you very much. Always a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
Washington Post journalist Jason Razayan is due to begin his trial after being detained in Iran for almost 10 months on charges that include espionage. His dual U.S.-Iranian citizenship and has been accused of passing information to hostile governments. I-24 News reporter Danny Swibel has more.
The Washington Post journalist was arrested at his home in Tehran last July, along with his wife, a fellow journalist, and 2 Iranian U.S. friends who have not been named. The Washington Post said in April that Rezayan had been charged with espionage for allegedly collecting confidential information about domestic and foreign policy and handing it to hostile governments.
By having a secret trial, a closed trial, it just shows how scared the Iranians are to show that there's evidence. I think they're embarrassed by the evidence they have. They've gone along with this sham for the last 10 months.
Rezayan, an Iranian-American dual citizen from Marin County, California, had been the Washington Post bureau chief in Tehran since 2012. His senior editors at the newspaper described the charges as ludicrous and expressed cautious optimism that Rezayan will be released soon.
Iran has not publicly said what the charges are. We know what the charges are simply from his lawyer, who's been able to review them and has been able to talk somewhat publicly about them. But they revolve in allegations that what Jason did went beyond his mandate as a journalist, that he gathered information and provided it to foreign governments, including the United States.
The Committee to Protect Journalists, a New York-based press freedom watchdog, has urged the Iranian Revolutionary Court that handles cases related to serious political and security matters to drop the charges immediately and release Rezayan.
Yes, is it a shift in the agenda, diplomatic spin, or maybe a result of pressure? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reportedly softened his hardline approach towards Israeli settlements in the West Bank, offering to discuss their borders. Is it the beginning of a change, or is it the beginning of a new era? Diplomatic correspondent for the News Today, Eli Ochenberg, explains.
The newly formed Israeli government had a very rocky beginning, with an endless amount of uncertainties, but also with one very clear main trait. It is a right-wing government, and all of its members are on the same page when it comes to diplomatic and/or territorial concessions. Very clear until Tuesday morning. Whether it's the international community's pressure, the visit of the EU's top diplomat Federica Mogherini last week, a realization of the new reality, or plain well-known political spin, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made many people raise their eyebrows when it was reported that he wants to reach understandings with the Palestinians on the borders of Jewish West Bank settlements Israel would annex under any peace agreement.
The settlement block will be a part of the State of Israel in any future agreement, if and when there will be one.
According to the Israeli daily Haaretz, while meeting last Wednesday with Mogherini at his Jerusalem residence, Netanyahu laid out his plan to determine the borders of the settlement blocks, so it would be clear where in the West Bank Israel could continue building. This is a serious shift from his long-time refusal to outline any borders of the settlement blocks, even when the U.S. suggested it in the past. But Netanyahu's new outlook pleased neither the Palestinians nor his right-wing allies.
We see all the settlements constructed on lands of the Palestinian state, which were occupied in 1967, including Jerusalem, the capital, as illegitimate and illegal.
Palestinian chief negotiator Saeb Arikat and Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki had a similar response, completely dismissing Netanyahu's alleged willingness to resume negotiations, saying all West Bank settlements are illegal, hence there's no place for discussion. Israeli Agriculture Minister Uri Ariel of the hawkish Jewish Home Party was angered by the report as well, saying such an offer is dangerous and goes against the government's stated aims and guidelines.
Yes, and right now with me here in the studio is former Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister, Ambassador Danny Ayalon. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
Ambassador Ayalon, try to explain to me, because it seems that Benjamin Netanyahu all the time is taking one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back. You know, at the end of the day, somebody will understand the trick, maybe?
Well, we have to understand that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is almost in an untenable situation. You know, on the one hand, he has a very hawkish government, a very narrow government. Some would say a weak government. On the other hand, he sees the international pressure and he understands that he has to initiate. He knows that the stalemate cannot longer continue, and he has to initiate something in order to, one way, to fan the initiative of the French in the Security Council, and also pressure from the Americans, which is, of course, coming after, if there is an agreement with Iran. So everybody is bracing for American pressure after June 30th. So he is preparing the grounds. How does he do it? By suggesting what he has never done before, starting to somehow draw the lines. He has never done that before. He always said, we cannot draw the lines independently of security arrangements, recognition issues.
Ambassador Ayalon, are we drawing the lines for 67 years now? It seems that, you know, until when can he continue drawing the lines? Because let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He did one step right now that maybe Israel didn't do for a long, long time. The Palestinians on their side saying, oh, okay, just as Israel starting to move. No, we don't want this anymore. So what is the current situation that he's in right now?
Well, I'll tell you, from his point of view, he says that he wants to be sure, before he gives any tangible assets to the Palestinians, that they really are ready, not just for a peace in terms of a piece of paper, a signature, but in changing the reality. And what he says is to change the reality means that they have to accept Israel as a sovereign Jewish state here, and to work for coexistence, peaceful coexistence and historic reconciliation. This is why he insists on the end of claims. This is why the end of conflict. And of course, a Jewish state, which would be, in his mind, the real practical translation of the end of claims.
You took the word from my mouth. Let's be practical, okay? How can he really move with this kind of government when he has such a narrow government, when a government that each and every one basically disagree on the international community stand and on the United States stand? So it seems that he cannot even move to a practical solution.
This is why I believe everything in the negotiation will have to be in closed rooms in order for them to be effective, in order for them to make any progress. And then if and of course there is a big if there is any kind of understanding, he will have to bring it to the Knesset, and then there could be a reshuffling in the government, and then, if it's something serious, he could call on the Labor Party to say, okay, this is what I have achieved, now let's see if you will support me, instead of the people of my government which are going to leave me.
And then there will be a big balagan all over again. Balagan is a mess for our viewers who don't know that. Thank you very much, Daniel. It will be interesting to see Isaac Herzog coming in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And a surprising terror trial in Austria. A 14-year-old was convicted today of planning to bomb a Vienna train station and sentenced to 8 months in prison. According to the court, the teen, named as Mark Khan G, wanted to carry out the attack before going to fight in Syria alongside the Islamic State group. He was charged with belonging to a terror organization and giving an additional jail sentence of 16 months in his hometown. India is facing one of the worst heat waves it has ever seen, with hundreds of casualties, most of them coming from the southern states of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. The Indian authorities are still advising residents to stay indoors. I-24 News reporter Uri Shapira has more.
As Mexico and the U.S. confront deadly storms, another weather emergency is sweeping another part of the world. Hundreds of people have lost their life in India due to a major heat wave that swept the country. Estimates of the number of dead are approximate, but some reports suggest it could stand at around 800 people, and the number is constantly rising.
This year, summer is very severe. Due to that, people are getting dehydrated and they're feeling very sick.
Most deaths have occurred in the southern states of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, where, according to a BBC report, at least 750 people have died since last week.
Telangana also, most of the places recorded around 40 to 45 degrees centigrade. Still, heat wave conditions are continuing in both states. So it will further continue today and tomorrow also. Most probably the heat wave will continue.
Meteorologists believe that the heat wave was caused by drought and hot northwest winds. Unfortunately, many of the victims are old and come from the poor sectors of society and find it hard to protect themselves from the burning sun.
And right now we're going out for a small break, 2-minute break, and then we will be back for the rest of the news today with more to come. Don't go anywhere. 2 minutes and I'll be back. The fight for Anbar province, Shiite militias in Iraq announced an operation northeast of Ramadi, laying the groundwork to try and recapture the city from IS. Under European pressure, the Israeli Prime Minister makes a reported proposal to discuss borders on settlement blocks. The Palestinian leadership responds, calling it unacceptable. And hundreds dead in a heat wave across parts of India, with warnings the conditions will continue for days longer. Yes, welcome back. For weeks, Burundi has seen a deepening crisis sparked by the president's controversial move to run for a third term. And after a failed coup attempt and ongoing protests, the government is now condemning diplomatic pressure and signaling no compromise. Eli Ochenberg has the latest.
The crisis in Burundi continues to escalate. The opposition suspended peace talks with the ruling party after one of its leaders was murdered. Zedi Feruzi, who was one of the main opponents to the attempt by President Pierre Nkurunziza to seek a controversial third term in power, was gunned down in a drive-by shooting in the capital, Bujumbura. Burundi's government condemned the mounting diplomatic pressure over the president's controversial bid to stand for a third term, saying it would not bow to international criticism and that there is no intention of changing the agenda, even though the political crisis has already sparked weeks of civil unrest, an attempted coup, a refugee crisis, and international isolation. By now, dozens have been killed and over 100,000 people have fled the country since the protests erupted, and thousands more are still making their way to neighboring Tanzania. The killing of opposition members has forced many into hiding, and politicians, journalists, and activists who oppose the government have been targeted in a crackdown on the opposition.
What I am worried about is the threats the police are using towards civilians. They are killing the citizens by shooting at them. Protesters are not armed, but police are just shooting at us.
Meanwhile, a regional grouping of Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, as well as Burundi announced it planned a second meeting on the crisis on Sunday in Tanzania's main city of Dar es Salaam, saying all the bloc's leaders would attend.
Yes, and with me right now from Kampala, Uganda, is Andrew Green, journalist covering East Africa. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So, Andrew, let's try to understand what is the current situation on the ground.
Well, I think what we're seeing is a deepening crisis on the ground in Burundi. We're hearing reports about the protests spreading outside of the capital, which had not been the case, and a protester being shot, actually, in an area 60 kilometers outside of Bujumbura earlier this week. So what we're seeing is really a deepening political crisis.
So from what you're saying, if there is a deepening political crisis, it means that we should expect what, another coup?
Well, I think what we've seen over the past week, since the previous coup attempt, is the president's attempt to entrench himself and to weed out members of the army that he felt were against his regime. So it's unclear at this point how strong the opposition is or whether there's actually a base for another coup attempt to be convened and tried.
How strong actually the president is?
Well, obviously he retains control over the police as they've been very active in keeping the protesters at bay, and we are hearing reports that they're actually firing live rounds into protesters today, again in Bujumbura. And it was also clear in the previous coup attempt that he does retain at least some loyalty within the army, enough to hold off the previous coup attempt and to retain control over state media, the airport. So at this point, there shouldn't be any expectations that he's going to relinquish hold on power.
Andrew, we have from one side the government, from the other side we have the military. Like you said, it's a deepening political crisis. Where are the people inside all this mess?
Well, I think for what we're seeing is that there is very, very strong opposition, a strong peaceful opposition opposed to the president's attempt to stand for a third term, within the capital at least. What it's unclear is how strong that is around the rest of the country. Instead of seeing protests, what we're actually seeing is a lot of people fleeing the country, people who don't want to get involved in potential political violence. So I think at this point, people are being held, are being trapped between a very strong vocal opposition, but then also the military might that the president controls.
Yeah. Andrew, thank you very much. Like Africa doesn't have enough problems. Thank you very, very much for this.
Thank you.
Yes, let's move to Turkey. Less than 2 weeks from today, Turkey will hold general elections for the 550 members of the National Assembly. One of the hopefuls is a young gay activist who's campaigned for years for the rights of the LGBT community in his country. But is conservative Turkey ready for even one of the 550 parliament members to be an openly gay man? Ayman Siksik has more.
Is Turkey ready to elect its first ever openly gay lawmaker? Barış Sulu believes it is. The 37-year-old is running for the left-wing People's Democratic Party in next month's general elections. Acknowledging the obstacles he faces, Sulu said as many as 85% of Turks would oppose an LGBT deputy in the assembly.
The perspective on homosexuals is the same wherever you go, but perhaps this process will soften that perspective.
Sulu, who has campaigned for gay rights in Turkey for 17 years, recently launched a widely viewed online campaign introducing transgender youth to the relatively conservative Turkish society.
Yani kabul etmek zorunda kaldım, bırakıldım. Kadınım herhalde.
According to a 2014 Amnesty report, gays and lesbians in the country still face widespread social condemnation. Having protested the government's policies on this issue for years, Sulu now wants to make a difference from the inside. His party currently holds only 29 of the 550 seats in the Turkish parliament, which is dominated by the ruling AKP of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. But are things really changing in Turkey? In 2011, Sulu and his partner, a transgender man, were the first same-sex couple to submit a formal request for marriage in Turkey. But the authorities refused to marry them. On June 7 of this year, Sulu might make his way into the Turkish parliament, where he's likely to fight so that future same-sex couples looking to get married will not be forced to have their chance for happiness denied.
And right now on the phone with me is journalist Laura Wells, is in Istanbul. Good evening, Laura.
Good evening.
So, Laura, let's really, what are the chances that we will see a gay man in the Turkish parliament?
I'm sorry, could you repeat, please?
I'm saying, what are the chances that we will see a gay man in the parliament?
Well, that's a possibility. It really depends if HDP, which is the new Kurdish party, will be able to gain 10% of the vote to reach the 10% threshold. If they do not get 10% of the votes nationally, then all of their votes will be given to the second highest party in the region. And HDP is doing really well right now, especially in the east and amongst the center-left party, CHP's voters. So it is quite a possibility they could reach that 10% threshold. But in the east, the two main parties right now are HDP and AKP. So if they don't reach that 10% threshold, then what we're looking at is the ruling party, AKP, getting all of their votes, and that would actually bump them up 9% from where they are right now, which the polls are showing that they have somewhere in the low 40s.
Laura, before we will continue going to this path, I want to ask you, and I want to stay just a second with this social thing, with the giving or maybe giving the opportunity for a gay man to actually be in a parliament. What is the current situation, let's say, in a country that is going to be more conservative, more religious than it used to be?
Well, there are some, let's call them out, gay public figures. One of the most popular singers in the entire country is a transgender named Bülent, and he's very well accepted. He's on television. He's even appeared, or I should say she, has appeared on television even with President Erdogan before. So there's more acceptance than one would think. That being said, I know many individuals who are gay, and they don't even feel at liberty to come out to their families. So it's a very mixed bag, and I do think that were there to be a gay parliamentarian in Turkey, I do think that there would be some issue with hate speech against that individual because it's still not fully accepted by all sections of society.
Yes. Laura, what are the main targets that Erdogan has right now?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
I'm asking, what are the main targets that Erdogan is putting for himself in these elections right now?
Well, he wants to get as many votes as possible, and right now they do not have enough to get a referendum, nor do they have enough votes for the supermajority, which is what he would really like. He wants to change the system right now from the parliamentary one to a presidential system. And again, according to the polls, they're nowhere near that. But if HDP does not reach the threshold and the ruling party is expected to get those votes if it weren't to pass the 10% threshold, and the main opposition party, CHP and MHP, did more poorly than we're seeing right now in all the surveys, it is likely they could come close and perhaps have that referendum.
Yes.
The other scenario that's a possibility is perhaps that they would try to form a coalition either with HDP in order for the Kurds to have some sort of autonomy,
yes,
if AKP were willing to give it to them, or even MHP, which is a fairly conservative nationalist party.
Yes. Laura Wells, thank you very, very much for this. Since the British election 3 weeks ago, the issue of the UK's place in the European Union has been even more in focus. And indeed, in a meeting Monday night, Prime Minister David Cameron told the President of the European Commission that his country needs a new deal on Europe. Later this week, Cameron will make his case for reforms to the EU alongside other national leaders. And to understand what kind of reforms is he talking about, former Israeli ambassador to France, Daniel Sheck, is here with me. Good evening.
Good evening.
So what are the reforms that he's talking about, and what is the new place that the UK is looking for?
Well, the premise should be that the UK already has a slightly different status than other member states, and especially it has a special status among the large countries, among those who really make the backbone of policy making in the EU. Many argue that this is a natural situation because the UK has never considered itself a part of Europe, and in many ways, even geographically, physically, it is not. It is an island. But currently, the greatest problem for David Cameron and for the Conservative Party, because it was a big issue in the election, is the issue of migrants, of immigrant workers, and their very broad rights that are imposed by the EU regulation, their right to work, the right to social benefits within a very short time, etc., etc. And that will be, I think, the main focus of Cameron. Having said that, the economic situation is also an issue, but the UK is not part of the Eurozone, so they're not there to begin with.
But exactly from this part, can, let's say, the UK say, okay, we're not part of the Eurozone, we don't consider ourselves, like you said, as part of Europe, we should not pay any attention to your demands, like concerning the migrants issue?
Well, there's a balance, because the Conservative Party and David Cameron are not Eurosceptics. They do not want the UK to leave the European Union. And there is just so much difference that the European Union, the other member states, can tolerate and still consider the UK as part of the Union. So there's a balance to strike here. It doesn't look too good for David Cameron, I must say, who has promised his voters a referendum. An in or out referendum, meaning we stay in or we leave by the end of 2017, which seems like a long way to go, but it actually isn't. By European standards, all sorts of changes and regulation, it takes a long time. And as he was speaking, and as he is launching sort of a rapid tour of many European countries in order to meet European leaders and make the case for reform within the treaties of the founding treaties of the European Union, the two other big ones, François Hollande and Angela Merkel, have done the exact opposite. And seemingly, in a secret meeting, they have decided to strengthen the European integration, to strengthen political cooperation within the Eurozone, which is basically a message to Cameron, don't even dream of institutional reform.
Which is not going to be easy for him.
It's not going to be easy.
Yes. Ambassador Sheck, thank you very much for this. Yes, a massive tornado with winds of up to 180 kilometers per hour killed at least 13 people in the northern Mexico border town of Ciudad Acuña. Hundreds of homes have been damaged or destroyed in the city just across the border from Texas, where severe weather has led to deadly floods. ABC News has the story.
Stay out of harm's way. Save your life.
Governor Greg Abbott pleaded with Texans to obey evacuation orders as he added 24 counties to his disaster declaration, comparing floodwaters to a tsunami.
This is the highest flood that we've ever had in recorded history in the state of Texas.
Raging waters fierce enough to toss around this SUV like a toy.
Oh my God, oh my God.
And demolish this concrete bridge.
Wow.
And tonight, added danger from tornadoes. Like this one that rampaged just next door in a Mexican town, demolishing buildings, twisting this car around the hollowed shell of a home, and leaving at least 13 dead in its trail. In Texas, hundreds of homes have been destroyed.
The water line on the house, approximately 6.5, 7 feet.
Other homeowners are trying to salvage what they can with the helping hands of neighbors.
And all these people here are from our churches, and they're just God sent.
Rescue teams are searching for the missing. And across the South, record rain.
I'm standing in about 8 inches of water in my living room.
With more rainfall in the forecast. Philip Mena, ABC News, Wimberley, Texas.
And right now, financial analyst Lionel Friedfeld is with me. Hello, hello.
Good evening, Lucy.
We just talked about, with Daniel Sheck, about the Eurozone in Europe, and you are coming here to talk about a new strategy in Europe of Amazon.
From Amazon, they have to actually remake their strategy in Europe. Why? Because in the past, they had an agreement with Luxembourg where they signed a tax ruling, meaning they knew in advance, how much tax they will have to pay for Europe, and they were not paying the tax, like a corporate tax in France, in Germany, in different European countries, but only in Luxembourg. They were only paying VAT in different countries. Here, it's changing because the European Union is putting a lot of pressure against Amazon and a large e-commerce company, also like Facebook, like Google, because they say, no, you have to pay corporate tax in a country where the business is done. So no, is they going to change? For example, for Germany, Amazon had sales of 11 billion last year, wow, which is huge. And no, they're going to be, to pay tax in Germany. And obviously, the German state is going to earn a lot of tax out of that. The same case for France, where approximately 1.5 billion of sales was done by Amazon last year.
So what does it mean for Amazon? How much money are they going to lose, or they're going? It's a big company, so it's a little money for them.
It's a lot of money. They're going to still pay in Luxembourg, but they will have to stay in each state. But it's really revamping the way American corporations are doing business in Europe. They used to set up headquarters in Ireland, in Luxembourg, to do some leverage of tax, and no, it's not possible anymore. Europe wants, each company will have to create a local entity in France, in Germany, in Italy, and to pay local tax.
Okay, so let's talk about the travel industry trend and low-cost flying.
Yeah, because this is also like a model which is changing. No, we all know low-cost, EasyJet, Ryanairs, but it's not applying for long haul. It's starting in Asia with a subsidiary of Qantas from Australia, but also from Singapore Airlines. Now they're coming to Europe with Norwegian, a company for Norwegia, but also Lufthansa. They dedicated flight for going to New York, going to Asia, but at a low-cost prices. So we're going to see there is a big shift in the industry, because of that.
Okay, so next time I will take my flight to Asia from Europe.
Exactly.
Lionel Friedfeld, thank you very much for this. In media news, Charter Communication has agreed to buy media giant Time Warner Cable for some $55 billion, including debt. The deal is worth nearly $79 million. The new company, which will also include Bright House Networks, will be a broadband service and technology company serving 23.9 million customers in 41 states as it aims to compete with U.S. cable market leader Comcast. And now we're back to Israel, to northern Israel, where the Arab village of Arara hosted a technology expo designed to make the world of high-tech more accessible to Arab youth. Sausan Shazli and Ayman Siksik have the story of the NGO behind this initiative.
Hasub, an Arab NGO, is on a mission in the Arab society in Israel.
Hasub started out as a group of young people who believe in increasing opportunities of employment in the Arab sector. Technology is at the forefront of every industry in the world. We don't want to be left behind.
Hasub means computer in Arabic. At this expo in the Arab village of Arara, 2 generations of the Arab population gather together. The young ones, for whom technology is almost second nature, and their parents.
When our community wants to be exposed to these innovations and technology, there's no need for them to go to Tel Aviv. Our own young generation is very creative.
But the expo was marked by more than just the age differences of the participants. Many of the attendees were young women in traditional Muslim headscarves, signaling that interest in technology outweighs gender and religion.
There are new opportunities in our society, and as women, we want to be a part of that. We want to benefit, especially because there is a misconception that only men are interested in high-tech.
Another important goal for Hassoub is making high-tech opportunities accessible to the disabled in the Arab communities.
We created a device that copies the function of the human nervous system. This allows people with nervous disabilities to determine the temperature of objects without touching them, so they're not in danger.
Innovation and outside-the-box thinking. This was the message Hassoub had in store for the young participants of its expo, where dreams of a more progressive society were met with a possible answer: technology.
Yes, a blessed initiative. I-24 News correspondent Uri Shapiro took a tour of Jericho, believed by some to be the oldest city in the world, for a special program that brings together Jews and Arabs in a joint discussion on the different narratives of its history.
Liran always wanted to visit the West Bank city of Jericho, believed to be the oldest in the world. But as a Jewish Israeli, he found it hard to walk freely in Palestinian-controlled areas, until last week, when he succeeded in turning his dream into reality.
My blood is even moving faster, because this city, I heard so much about it, and I'm actually here now, and it's so close.
Liran took part in a new binational program called Tiyul Richla, which brings Israelis and Palestinians together on a 2-day trip, giving them the chance to meet each other and also to visit historic sites in Israel and in the West Bank.
We created a model of a program around history tours that lead to conversations about narratives, memory, identity.
Well, the idea is to take a step back from the current politics to learn about the other side, their history, their culture, how they see the world.
What seems a pleasant trip for some could be a difficult challenge for the others. Noel Hayak, a young Palestinian from Jericho, confronted her family who disapprove of her participation.
My family suffered from the IDF. My house was destroyed and my brother, who used to work in Israel as a bus driver, was shot to death. My family was not satisfied by my joining this tour, but I explained to them about the purposes of this group and that there are Israelis there who want peace, just like me.
It may also be a difficult task for the initiators of the program to try to find a balance between the two different narratives which define the area, a delicate issue which led to arguments more than once.
Often the differences are nuanced. For example, King Herod, for an Israeli tour guide, he would present King Herod and all his magnificent buildings as a Jewish achievement. A Palestinian tour guide might present King Herod as a Roman ruler, and the Jews might feel robbed of that credit.
The histories of both cultures are mixed and interwoven with each other in this area. It is difficult to decide which one came first and which one is more dominant. Perhaps this tour shed a bit of light of the roots of the conflict and perhaps even the future of it, as both sides refuse to recognize the other, while layer upon layer of history provides living evidence of the true nature of it. Uri Shapiro, I-24 News, Jericho.
This is the incredible story of a woman who was diagnosed with deadly cancer, declined an operational treatment that would have left her with no legs, and lived to speak about it. But how did she do it? She and her doctors have no idea. Shahal Peled brings her story.
If someone would have told me the story, my response would be unequivocal. Both the patient and her doctor have lost their minds, and I was there.
This indeed is an incredible story. The story of Therese, a science teacher in the Israeli city of Haifa, who about 1.5 years ago felt pain in her ankle.
My foot was swollen, but at first I ignored it.
Dr. Bickles of the Orthopedic Oncology Department in Ichilov Hospital sent Therese to a CT and a biopsy.
The biopsy showed a malignancy process called sarcoma. Therese had one of the most violent versions of this type of cancer, a terrible tumor.
I was shocked. At that moment, I didn't feel it was related to me.
After seeking alternative medical opinions in the US, Therese was left with the only option to save her life, the horrible amputation of her leg. But on the day of the operation, it was cancelled for technical reasons. A second operation was scheduled, but then delayed for hours. The third amputation operation was later cancelled by Therese herself when her mother fell ill. She eventually decided to give up on the operation altogether.
Therese said that if the operation was postponed 3 consecutive times, it's a sign she shouldn't do it. When someone makes such a decision and understands its consequences, we respect it. There's no other choice.
But 3 months later, the impossible happened. Therese was sent for another MRI scan, but the results were difficult to explain. The tumor had shrunk substantially.
This is unprecedented. I've never seen such a thing. I've never heard of such stories. Cancer can retreat in very rare circumstances, but it can.
Another biopsy showed the same results.
When I heard this, I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. I asked Dr. Bickles, maybe it was a mistake.
But Bickles and his colleagues rechecked themselves thoroughly and found there was no mistake. Where 5 months earlier a deadly tumor grew, now there was no lump to be seen. Neither Therese nor her doctors can explain what had happened. She claimed she hadn't changed her diet and simply prayed. No magic powder and no rational answer, none that could be directed at other similar cases. Just pure miracle with reasons beyond human scientific capacity, at least for now.
If you believe it could happen. We're going out for 12 minutes break and an update from our news desk, and then we will be back for the rest of the news today. Don't go anywhere. Less than 2 weeks since the controversial Israeli government was sworn in, and already there are changes within the government positions. One name this week was, above all, Gilad Erdan, who was sworn in as Minister of Public Security. After not getting the foreign ministry, Erdan decided not to join the government, but after 2 weeks changed his mind, causing a string of other changes, and it's only been less than 2 weeks? Yes, less than 2 weeks. Professor of Political Science, Dr. Hani Zubaydah is here with me. Hello, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Don't ask. And diplomatic correspondent for the News Today, Eli Ochenberg. Good evening. So, okay, Eli, let's start with you.
Yes, really? I think Hani really wants to say something.
I told you so.
I told you so. I told you not to say I told you so.
I'm not telling you I told you so anymore.
Okay, perfect. So
but
you
he did
told
say exactly
I'm
that.
Come with a t-shirt. I told you so.
Yeah.
So let's start. He told us so, and
Erdan caved in, joined into the government, and like nothing happened. No being humiliated by Netanyahu, not being left outside of the coalition of the government agreements. He just came back. As predicted.
But he came back, and on the other side, somebody else is hurt. So if you're winning someone, you're losing somebody else.
Yeah, but he made the calculation. We spoke about this last week. We spoke about the trio. Benjamin Netanyahu on Jerusalem Day saw 3 persons sitting right next to each other. It was Gilad Erdan, Gideon Saar, and Naftali Bennett. This literally gave him a nightmare. He saw a triangle in which he would lose situation because he understood that Bennett and Erdan will stream everything through Saar, who is outside the government. So his first priority within that week was to get Erdan back in. It should be said, it's not just the Interior Security Ministry. He gave him a lot of other perks to his office, and he somehow bolstered the office. It's now Interior Security on steroids. So he has more than he asked for, or more than he bargained. And on top of that, he gave Ze'ev Elkin the Jerusalem ministry.
Explain to me, how does it work, the Interior Ministry on steroids?
He gave him what used to be Steinitz's
Wait,
office.
but I've made a special
sorry.
game for us.
Let's see the special
She made a
game.
game, and you are taking all the thunder from her.
Sorry.
I wish we had a wiper, but
okay.
we don't. So let's pretend that we're a foreign diplomat, a politician, or just someone who's interested in what's going on, and I want to discuss with someone the Iranian nuclear program.
Okay.
Who am I reaching to? Israel Katz, Minister of Transport and more importantly, Intelligence Minister. Tzipi Chotoveri, Deputy Foreign Minister. Yuval Steinitz, Minister of Infrastructure and more importantly, in charge of fighting Iranian nuclear program for the next 2 months. Gilad Erdan,
Okay.
which as of 2 months from now will be in charge of that and strategic affairs, or Silvan Shalom, who is in charge of the dialogue with the U.S. and the negotiations with the Palestinians.
You know, I'm asking myself as a journalist in I-24 News, if we want to bring one of them to speak about Iran, who do we bring?
Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yes, absolutely. This division, but this
Solution.
is the bottom line. This division, too many divisions of the same issue, either way you turn it around, means that Netanyahu is the sole final authority to decide about everything, especially when it comes to the Iranian
So what does it mean?
program.
He's joking in their face and he's telling them, okay, you deal with Iran, you deal with Iran, you deal with Iran. It sounds really important, but at the end of the day, I deal with Iran and you will do whatever I'm telling you to do.
Among all the people, there's one person who's completely redundant from the equation, and that's Tzipi Chotoveli, the Vice Secretary of Foreign Affairs. She's completely not in the game. She has no authorities, period. It's just something that they needed to give someone.
It's a symbolic title, yeah.
A woman in the government, it looks fine, so that's it. And the other issue is that Benjamin
If
Netanyahu...
she's hearing you right now, it's
she can hear or she cannot hear. The thing is that it used to be the same solution with her in the former government when she was the Vice Minister of Transportation, and she was redundant. Completely the same deal happened here.
Yes, but now she does not have a minister above her, so she's very proud.
But I want to take you to about Zev Elkin and the way that he took it, because he's not the only one who's not satisfied. Also, the municipality,
the mayor of Jerusalem.
The mayor of Jerusalem. I'm sorry. Is also angry about
He claims
this.
that there's no need for a governmental post of the. There's no need for a Jerusalem case. There's a mayor. There's a very active city, and you don't need to waste public money and to again confuse authorities with a governmental figure.
The only problem
He's kind of right.
Yeah, but Nir Barkat didn't read the book The Prince by Machiavelli, which Benjamin Netanyahu really operates according to. What Benjamin Netanyahu does is divide and conquer. He knows that if he would give the authority to a sole person, then he will face a very strong opposition in attempt to try to somehow break the boundaries and get into an issue like the Iranian issue. So it's better for him to spread the authority among various people, and then when he needs to do something, then he will stay in a very, how do you call it, a very governmental way. This is something the Prime Minister
I just want to stop this discussion just for a short while, maybe a long while. We're just hearing about sirens in the south of Israel and about explosions being heard in the south of Israel and maybe a fall in the city of Ashdod. On the phone with us is Amir Oren, Defense and Government Analyst for Haaretz Daily newspaper. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
Not at all. Good evening.
So, Amir, what are the latest? This is a break of a peaceful, let's say, period, if we can say.
Yes, it was tense in the south, but not to that extent. And actually, earlier today, one of the politicians who represent the south, member of Knesset Chaim Yelin, has boasted that he managed to convince Defense Minister Ya'alon to cancel the sirens during a home front exercise for fear that people would believe that this is for real. Well, it turns out that it is for real, and it is not part of an exercise. Between 3 and 5 rockets have been launched towards the southern part of Israel. There are various reports, whether it's adjacent to the city of Ashdod or Kiryat Malachi or places nearer the border. Apparently, no one was hurt, and all the ammunition fell in open spaces. This is still being checked, but it came as a total surprise. No one was prepared for it. And as far as we know, Iron Dome has not operated.
Explain to me, Amir, how does it working right now? Because in the last few reports that we got, or the discussions that we had here in the studio, we spoke about some kind of negotiations with Hamas to reach some kind of a hudna. What is happening right now? Is Hamas in charge? Are some other fractions inside the Gaza Strip in charge of this? What is happening?
Right, it's not contradictory at all. In fact, it's in line with what has always happened when Israel has been talking with the Palestinian Authority or Fatah. Hamas used to do something in order to break the atmosphere, the peaceful approach. And this time around, if Hamas is indeed having some clandestine fillers with Israel, another faction, or perhaps hardliners within Hamas in the military wing who do not want their own leadership to have a hudna with Israel. They are trying to provoke Israel into reacting in such a way that we are going to have another round of escalation. But again,
Amir, exactly what are the chances that it will deteriorate for another round of escalation?
It will not this time around, because Israel, especially the defense and military leadership, these are moderate people exercising their considerate experience. They know that Israel should act coolly out of its own vital interests and not being provoked by some minor fraction. They are not hot-blooded, trigger-happy leaders. And therefore, even though eventually we might wind up in another round, especially if the tunnels which are being dug again, if they provoke Israel into conducting an operation, we are going to see it. Whether it's later this summer or not, or perhaps even later, is too soon to tell. But right now, this incident, without casualties, this is not the first shell in another round.
Amir Oren, thank you very, very much for this report. And I will stay, this is a shift of events, of course, like we know and used to here in Israel. We've been talking a lot about, this government. It's a narrow government. Benjamin Netanyahu is really, let's say, having some troubles, and maybe we'll have some troubles managing it in the future. Let's play what if. What if this will deteriorate? This plays very good in the hands of Benjamin Netanyahu.
Obviously. The first thing he will do is he will reach out to Herzog and he will say, this is a national crisis. The only way for you to operate, if you think about yourself as a national leader, is come in, take the foreign ministry and be my minister. Stay right next to me. Let's make the decisions together. And that has always worked. Because what you're saying is now the field is open, let's try and do something different. And an outlook of national unity, which I think he will do. As I said, he knows Machiavelli inside out. That's what a leader does in such a time.
Yes, but more than this, the entire approach, the entire case of the hawkish right wing is these situations exactly. When there is a security escalation and then the right wing leaders can say, I told you so. Look what happens. We're negotiating or not negotiating with Hamas. Netanyahu only earlier today there were reports that he's willing to negotiate some things, and then Israel and the right wing in particular can blame yet again the Palestinian side for dragging it into a security situation.
But if we will look at it from the international perspective, from the international community perspective, this plays very good for this government, because this government is saying, come on, we cannot speak with the Palestinians, we cannot, you see what is happening in the West Bank, the Palestinians are doing what they want. Of course, in the Gaza Strip, they are doing what they want. We're fighting a terror organization. So you see, this government is going to fight with these cells or with these entities the best way that it can, and only the right can win.
Yeah, obviously, I think I heard him saying that this is a more moderate leadership for Israel. I respectfully disagree. This is not a more moderate leadership of Israel. This is a leadership that is based on the extreme right. No center party. It is all rightist, including Kahlon, who tried to position himself in the right. He was considered to be hawkish within the Likud. Right now, if this government will be the base for decisions, this government will walk into the Gaza Strip as of tomorrow.
But when it comes to diplomatic relations, the French-led peace initiative is supposed to make progress in the upcoming months as the nuclear agreement with Iran will be finalized. What will happen if we will see yet another round of escalation? What will the French, what will the EU do with such a situation here? It ruins completely their case that there is a chance, because obviously within the Palestinians there are many problems of leadership between Hamas, between Fatah. There are many things going on there, so it really, destabilized the entire situation.
And this is going very good with what we reported here during the election campaign is that Hamas was really worried that Benjamin Netanyahu won't be elected again as the prime minister, because then they will have to shut up. But this time, here they're showing, okay, Benjamin Netanyahu is still the prime minister. We're not going to shut up. This is a reason for party.
Yeah, well, unbelievably so. What they're doing is they're walking into the trap that everybody here, at least on the left camp, thought that they would walk into. Right now, at least the President of the United States was trying to make a point that there is a partner on the other side. And he was discussing the fact that there is quiet, there's no shelling from the Gaza Strip into Israel. And he said, well, in good faith, if you sit with the Hamas and the Fatah, then there is a chance to move progress and to move forward. And Barack Obama really sees that as an opportunity. On top of the fact that he is now trying somehow to negotiate the deal with Iran, I think this whole thing explodes in his hand, and he doesn't really like it. I think that Barack Obama is one of the major players right now trying to get people to the table. Of course, the French and the EU. As it looks right now, if this will escalate, this might be a very quick escalation into another large-scale operation or war. In the current future.
So, if we're right now trying to understand what will happen, this doesn't work completely with the Palestinian Authority.
Well,
with Mahmoud Abbas.
Yeah, there are two entities. These are two different entities, and that's the whole.
This is exactly the problem.
This also,
the Palestinian Authority cannot control the Hamas faction.
And this almost deletes everything that the Palestinian Authority, all the efforts that the Palestinian Authority was building in the last few months among the international community, because maybe the international community will come and say, okay, you cannot control yourselves. What do you expect us to do?
Well, now what they will say is the fact that they cannot control the Gaza Strip is due to the fact that Israel will not allow any connection between the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, and the Gaza Strip. The disconnect between the two entities has a huge impact on the fact that the Fatah cannot really get a hold of the Gaza Strip, and Hamas keeps on holding to the Strip. And as we've heard, well, in the last 2 years, Hamas is also gaining power in the West Bank. Now the question is, what will they do?
Yes.
If the PLO will try to come to the table, this government will not accept any good faith right now.
Hani Zubeida, Elia Homer, thank you very much for for being with me and shifting the issues from inner political issues to right now. Maybe an escalation, maybe not. We will just say that sirens were heard in the south of Israel. 4 missiles were probably, maybe even 5, were launched from the Gaza Strip towards Israel. Of course, we will continue updating you with the coming hours with our news desk updates. Stay with us. Thank you very much for being with me here in the news today. Of course, tomorrow we will be here at the same time, same place from the Jaffa Port, Israel. Have a great week.